So here I am looking at LaCie power supplies again, and I've got some capacitors to replace the capacitors in there. It's not that visible, but there's some Samex on, whatever the hell you want to call them, shitty capacitors in there that have died, and I want to get them out and replace them. Slight problem is that this heatsink covers them up. Now if we look, you can see it's not all one continuous, so I've just got to take off this segment of heatsink. Problem is, of course, is that with heatsinks, I've just tried heating up with the various soldering irons and heat guns that I have at my disposal these three contacts to try and get them hot enough to get the solder off them. And of course, the heatsink is dissipating the heat so well that I can't actually heat them up enough to be able to get the damn things out. Now you can see in here that there's a tiny little nut that is holding the heatsink on. So in order to get the heatsink off, I need like some special right-angled fucking micro nut tool in order to repair this pissing heap of shit. Oh god, it's so fucking frustrating. I don't know why people design products to be completely fucking unrepairable. It's just really mentally retarded. Yeah, I mean, LaCie deserves shooting for this, really. Just shooting. One of my options, because the difficulty is I can't even get any kind of tool in here to really have a purchase on this tiny little nut. So I'm thinking about getting a grinder and just grinding off, you know, 3 or 4 millimeters on the edge of this intermediary heatsink here, this one in the middle, so that I can get a tool down onto the nut. Just grind, well, maybe it's about 4 millimeters, grind off 4 millimeters, which will reduce the efficiency of the heatsink a bit, but I mean, it's the only way to get access to this thing, to be able to unscrew these threads, to be able to take this heatsink off, to replace the heatsinks that to replace the capacitors that I need to replace in here. I mean, I tried heating this up, and I guess instantaneous heat-wise, the problem is this heatsink's too good at dissipating, so whatever heat I'm applying to these pins, I mean, I did manage to get a bit of solder off, but it's not enough to actually clear the solder out and make this a loose contact. So yeah, I don't see a way of doing this at the moment. I'm gonna have to get my grinder out. But you know, it's getting to the bloody mindedness point of view now. Like, I'm so bloody minded and so fucking furious with LaCie for designing things this way. I mean, if you're gonna put some capacitors on something, at least don't hide them behind a heat shield to the extent whereby they can't be replaced, you know? But then again, these companies don't give a shit about the environment. They don't give a shit about people repairing anything. They don't give a shit about anything much, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't understand why anybody would design it so you can't replace the capacitors in a device, really. I mean, you know, if you're talking about micro soldering with sort of nano capacitors or something, then fair enough, you know, it's going to be difficult for humans to do, but it's really just this heatsink that's in the way. I mean, there's another alternative approach, which is to grind a groove into this bit of a heatsink here, and then sort of bend this flap up, which will ruin the efficiency of the heatsink to some extent, but I mean, it's one way of getting at it. I don't know, I think I'm going to try the grinding on this end of the intermediary heatsink first and get this nut off there, see if I can get this heatsink off. Jesus Christ, it really is, it's a Jesus wept scenario. I mean, I got to the point where I was heating up this heatsink so dramatically that this actual component here was, you know, the plastic on it was beginning to melt, and I was like, this is just insane. So I had to stop, basically. I don't know, I could have ruined this component by now, who knows. I don't think I ruined any of the other components around it, but, well, it's just highly irritating. The whole thing's highly irritating. I mean, it begs a question as to how they put it in the first place. Presumably they can solder it on, but it's one of those things, one of those sort of unreversible scenarios. You can solder something on, but you then can't unsolder it. I suppose if you had some specialist kind of solder thing that could flash heat at really high temperature, you know, faster than the heatsink could absorb the thermal energy, then maybe you could like unsolder these joints really quick. But I mean, Christ almighty, I mean, really, just beggars belief, really. Anyway, I'm sure other people have probably experienced this and found better solutions for removing of components that are attached to heat sinks, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just nuts. This is what I say to fucking LaCie. Fuck you, LaCie. Fuck you. Alright, cheers, bye. Oh, it's going to be demonetized, is it? Who gives a fucking shit? Fuck you, LaCie. And you know, the kind of heat that you have to apply probably end up damaging this part of the circuit board anyway. Just too much heat going into it, you know, in a vain attempt to get some fucking component off that's impossible. I don't know, just super angry. Never mind, right, let's crack on with this. I'll show you some video results if we make any fucking progress with this heap of shit. Alright, bye.